female choice is like the number one law of mating, that as women have evolved.
That right there, my friends, is female correctness 101. Because historically, that choice has been limited by the patriarchy. It has been limited by a social order that prioritized men as responsible and authorities from within society. And it was that way prior to the sexual revolution because of, again, we gave the world hormonal birth control and we gave women 100%, exactly, female choice, right? 100% unilateral control over the reproductive state of humanity. And we're 60 years since then. And now the most natural thing in the world is to think that like female choice is the benchmark. It's the keystone of everything. A woman chooses you and that's how it works, right? And that's why when we talk about like issues of, let's say, forced copulation, because I don't want to use that word, when we talk about how men in a patriarchal society not only had responsibility to the women that they got with, but they also had responsibility to the families that they produced to provide, protect, and be parentally invested in at least in monogamous societies, or even in polygamous societies, depending on the religion. But they had the authority to exercise that. The problem is right now is that women have 100% authority over the choice and 0% responsibility at this stage. And I mean that in terms of we will legislate it to the point where women will be absolved of personal decisions, will be absolved of pregnancies, will be absolved of, don't judge me. Don't look back at I've had my fun in my past. The past is gone. My sexual past doesn't make any difference, but it still does because you're a human male and it does have, evolutionarily speaking, it better have a significance to you. But it doesn't matter if all we're going to do is say female choice is the number one thing. And I'm not saying that women shouldn't be able to choose who they want to get with. The problem he's getting into, I see the imbalance in the dynamic that he's talking about, is prior to the sexual revolution, it was a compromise between men's mating strategy and women's mating strategy. Women's mating strategy today is, if people want to say this, they want to say, oh, women are the gatekeepers to sex and men are the gatekeepers to commitment. No, they're not. They're not. I answered this I answered Sydney about this on You Are Here. I wish that were the case. They're not. Women are the benchmark. They're the gatekeepers of commitment and the gatekeepers of sexuality today. You say, well, I'm not going to be committed to some girl if she doesn't want to, suck my, like we can from a male perspective, a male logic, we can see it in those terms, but we can clearly see that if it is, in fact, the keystone is women's choice as to who they're going to get with, well, then how does that reflect when it comes to marriage rates, age of first marriage, age of first childbirth, the high incidence, 42% of women being having children out of wedlock? Baldoni don't want to touch that, right? They don't want to touch that unflattering facts about any of that stuff. But what happens here is if we say, okay, well, women's choice should be that's the highest, the loftiest goal. That's the keystone from which, that's the prime directive, right? That's the keystone from which anything else, proceeds from. Okay, if that's the case, but if that is in fact the case, then women are also the gatekeepers of commitment. So you throw that idea out of your head right now. Women are as long as they're the unilateral controllers of hypergamy. And in doing so, by the way, I should have brought this up as well, is in proposing that female choice is the prime directive of, a gynocentric social order for sure. In doing so, what you're basically saying is that hypergamy and women's mating strategy is the preeminent strategy that should define society. That's what you're saying. Because that wasn't the way it was before. And I don't think a lot of people really realize that. Because prior to the sexual revolution, it was a compromise between men's mating strategy and women's mating strategy. So men would say, okay, I'm going to provide for you. I really want to have sex with you. And that was the only access I could get to you was through marriage. I mean, societally speaking, obviously you could still have premarital sex back then. But from a social dynamics perspective, prior to, say 1960 anyways, that was the case. If you were a single mother, that was shameful. If you were certainly a teenage single mother, if you had a baby out of wedlock, you had to take that baby and go have it somewhere else, and at least adopt it out, or the grandparents take care of it. You would have to. It was what my mother-in-law says. You have to put her away, and that was shameful because That guy, because she had to be on her own. She's a liability. And I think on some level of consciousness, those women still, even in that time, understood that being a single mother was a detriment to your ability to get a good quality guy. No guy back then wanted to get with single mothers because that was a bad bet for his paternity. But also, she's got a resource drag, which is the kid. And I know it sounds like really I'm being unempathetic by saying that. Maybe I'm dark triad for saying that, but it's true. That's the nuts and bolts of this. And so back then we balanced that by saying, okay, these are my mating strategies. And there's some of it that is really good for you. And there's some of that's not, because I really want to bang other chicks. And so my opportunity cost, I will compromise that by saying you're the only, I will forsake all others in sickness and health. I'll take care of you. I'll take care of the kids. I'll take on that responsibility. I'll get a good job. I'll make sure we have a house. I'll make sure that the babies are fed. I'll make sure the lights stay on. I'll make sure you're happy. I'll give you a dishwasher and some washing machines too. I'll do my best to keep you, where you're at. Here's the exchange. The compromise is this: I get sex, and any of the sex that we have and produce a child, that's better be my goddamn child. That's the deal. Deal? Okay. Well, for women, it's like, okay, I need a man to provide for me. I need all of that. I want that. I'm in love with you because I feel like I have some sort of empathy, have some form of emotional investment in you as well. I really want to have sex with you, but the best way to do that, at least in 1955, is to get married. And consequently, we see the marriage rate is higher. The rate of first marriage is higher. And granted, there's a socioeconomic factor to that as well. But that was the compromise. That compromise is gone, has been gone really since the early 80s, I think. But we don't want to talk about that. We want to say, well, it's all these dark triad guys that just want to get their wet. Well, of course they do. There's no consequence to them not. They're already desired, universally desired. That's the choice that women make. The choice is this: I want to fuck the dark triad guy. I want Christian Grey. That's who it is. That's what they want. But we're going to ignore that because we're still living in an old order. And maybe it's because he's a boomer, but in an old order ideal that we think that men ought to live up to, while simultaneously we're going to say, well, it's all about women's choice because we can't think in any other way than hormonal birth control, than the sexual revolution, then the free love generation, then women, then followed after that is gynocentrism. We can't think, it literally cannot have a concept outside of that framework.
Involved the desire to choose when, where, with whom, and under what circumstances they have sex. And these male efforts like sexual harassment, sexual assault, stalking, intimate partner violence basically function to bypass female choice, or that's what they're aimed at.
Yes, that's exactly what they're aimed at.